At Agentuity, we're naturally focused on making our services truly agent native, but that doesn't mean we have to sacrifice developer experience. So for the past couple of months, we've had what we call the SDK Explorer as the main landing page for our documentation. Now the Explorer lets you learn by doing, so it's really like Docs for humans, as we like to call it, since you get to try out different features and services that we have to offer with interactive demos. Let's take a quick look at it. Right now, I think it's safe to say that documentation is making a comeback. Having a good agents MD file, good skills, good examples, all that is super important for our coding agents and their ever so valuable context. But even given how good these coding agents have gotten, it's still useful to learn how a service, feature, or tool actually works as we're using them in our projects and in production. So for us, that's where the Explorer comes into play. So if we head over to our documentation at agentuity.dev, you'll notice that the Explorer is pretty much the first thing that you'll see. We kind of make it front and center. And we can actually walk through a few of these examples, but first you'll notice that we kind of break this up into different sections. So we start you off with the basics, walk you through some of the services and patterns that we provide, and then walk you through some examples at the end there. So to start off, let's just take a look at what the agent context lets you do. So when you first come into an Explorer page, you'll notice that we give you a nice overview of what this demo or this page actually shows you. Since we're talking about the handler context, this kind of walks you through what you need to know. So in this case, the context object, or CTX, is how you're going to use logging all of our storage APIs, get information about session and thread IDs, and more. So you'll notice that with something like session, we're using context.session to get the actual information about not only the session ID, but also the thread ID. And we can click into this and see how the session is changing, but the thread is not, right? And to take a look at a related card, this state example will show you how context.thread.state works, which is basically how we allow you to store conversation history across different requests. So in this case, we have different requests, which means different sessions to the agent that's running all this, but the thread state is persistent. So we can see that thread visits is incrementing in this case. We can also take a look at context.logger, which is super helpful for debugging and getting more information about what your agents and routes are doing at trace level, info level, warn level, and at error level. And you can even do things like set up background tasks using context.waitUntil. So in this case, you can see that we started a background task, immediately sent that response to the client, and then 5 seconds later, that background task came in. And with all of these examples, if we move kind of from the interactive left side to the right side, you'll notice that we have some nice reference code for you. So if you're kind of curious how some of this works under the hood, this will give you more of a technical deep dive into how we're setting all this up. So again, for something like session information, you'll see that we use context.sessionID, context.thread.id to get some of this information that's shown here. And again, it walks you through all the logging, some of the storage APIs that we have to offer, and a bit more, including that wait until. And so of course you can take this example implementation and just copy paste into your existing projects, right? But what I think is super awesome is that you can actually run this reference code, which will run inside an Agentuity sandbox built from an Agentuity snapshot that has the reference code for all of these examples in the Explorer. So let's just go ahead and kick it off. And you'll notice that we're going to create a sandbox, provision some resources, and then give you the output from this code, right? So you'll see the new session ID come in and a new thread ID since we're running this in a sandbox, not in the agent on this side. And it'll output everything that you see in the reference code. So you get a nice deep dive into how all this works. If we take a look at a few more examples, one that I want to show really quickly is durable streams. And so, if you're unfamiliar, again, we give you a nice intro into what this concept actually is. So durable streams basically let you create durable content with permanent shareable URLs. So that content can live forever once you write to it. And so we can actually go ahead and just generate a summary before we even dive into the reference code, right? You notice we get a new summary here, and we can open that up to see some information streaming back for us. And again, once you have that durable stream, that content's going to live forever at this public URL that you can kind of share with others or with your coding agents, right? But if we go back, we can kind of dive into some of the code and see, how this works under the hood without really even having to check out the docs first. So in this case, you'll see that we're actually using routes. We're going to use c.var.stream.create, and c.var is sort of the equivalent for that context object we just saw earlier. And we'll create a new stream called summary with plain text and some additional metadata. And then we can use that wait until that we saw before, again with c.var instead of context, but the idea is the same, right? It's going to work in the background and it'll let us do other things while that's happening. So in this case, we're just going to have an LLM generate a summary for us. And while that's happening, we immediately return that URL, which is how we actually open that summary up while that summary is being written. So you can kind of hit that URL immediately or read from it immediately, right? And another thing to note is that with any of these pages, we link to the docs for a bit more information. So if you want to kind of read further into how some of this works, we give you a really easy way to get directly to that from our docs. And again, that can be super useful for your coding agents, right? You can kind of just append .md to the end of any of these pages and get some better markdown formatted docs for your agents. But if we head back, one last example that I want to show you is the evals example. And I think evals are super cool. Basically, at Agentuity, we give you this evals package, and it comes with a bunch of preset evals that you can kind of plug and play right out of the box. And so in this case, we're going to use a preset eval for answer completeness, and it'll be on a score from 0 to 1. And the thing with evals is they actually run after your agent responds, so they happen in the background, kind of similar to that wait until that we saw. But the cool part is you can also define custom evals for whatever your specific logic is. So in this case, we're just going to create an eval called factual claims. And we'll have another model determine if what claim a given agent is making is actually true. And this one will be a pass-fail, so it'll be a binary eval. And so again, you get that code, you can copy paste to kind of plug and play. You can run it to get some output in the sandbox, but we'll go ahead and actually take a look at this interactive demo. So once we get the result from the explainer, in this case GPT-5 Nano, you'll see that we get that response. We also get that session ID, which we now know is from that context.session ID. And then we get the evaluator, which is using Grok with a Q, giving us both the completeness and the factual claims eval. So we get both a score and a pass-fail for this example. And again, if you want to learn more or learn a bit more about what you can do with evals, we give you more examples here for you and your coding agents, right? But again, if you're new to Agentuity or new to any of the features that we're putting out, the Explorer is a really great place for you to kind of learn by doing and get started. So we really hope that you give it a try and that you like it. But until then, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.